Here goes my video. At the beginning of this action research, it was hard for me, but not because it was a difficult thing to do by itself, but because it was the very first time that I've been through this kind of experience before. Even though I studied translation and pedagogy, I never had to implement an action research project before. But one thing I was sure about is that it had to be connected with writing, because I would say that it is, or it was, one of our weakest skills at school. Sorry. Last year, the teachers were constantly telling us to start thinking about our action research. But the truth is, due to the everyday workload, assignments to deliver for the master, family issues, and so on, I never really devoted time to think about the topic of my action research. But one thing I was completely sure about, like I said, is that it had to be connected with writing. Like I said, it was our weakest skill because of time constraint, because sometimes the students don't want to write, or they don't want to use the language we are asking them to use. Many factors are involved. The implementation of this action research was not difficult at all, at least not from the side of the school I work at. People who are above me are very flexible concerning decision making, especially when the aim is to help our students to develop their skills using new methodology or using new technology. Besides, the fact that the nature of my action research is closely connected with the work I do inside the classroom, it was not something that called the attention of my students. Actually, if I hadn't told them about this intervention, they wouldn't even have noticed that something unusual was going on. The challenges I faced were not many, and thank God they were not so serious. I mean, not the kind that would jeopardize the intervention itself. Students don't do strikes at school. They come to classes on time. Most of our students have a very good attendance. I would say that the most important challenge I faced was that the day they had to write their first informal letter, only 24 out of the 36 students came to classes because they had been painting something the night before in the context of the celebration of the Students' Day, which was coming the next day. But then I thought 24 in the universe of 36 is not bad either. It will anyway show the level they are in before and after the intervention. And I would say it was the only challenge I faced. I am still convinced that those 12 students wouldn't have made a huge difference, in the sense that with the 24 who wrote the letters, I can anyway get an overview of the class. Regarding decision making during the implementation, there were a couple of them and I can talk about. The first one had to do with the use of the cell phone. I hadn't thought about that until I entered the room and I saw most of them playing an online game with their cell phones. So immediately I collected them and told them that I was not going to give them back away, not until the end of the activity. Because they would have thought, okay, I will start writing very fast, and once I finish, I will get my cell phone back, so I will continue playing. No, they knew beforehand that at the end of the class, the cell phones would be given back to them. That was the first one. Another decision making was the classroom setting. I asked them to separate, pretending they were going to be taking a test, even though they knew it was not going to be evaluated. I asked them to make lines and sit individually. This helped them to concentrate better on his or her job more than on the classmates' one. The third decision I made was a little bit before the implementation, and it was related to the fact of giving out all the material we were going to use. I always knew I had to give the material in printed version, but as they tend to lose everything, I decided to project on the board all the material. So while I was reading from the board, they could either read from their notes or read from the board. This way, if they lost or didn't bring the material, they could anyway know what was going on about the topic we were talking about. Regarding where I could have done differently, I think now looking back was that the day they had to write the second letter, maybe I could have taken them to a bigger classroom because they were constantly making questions, which obviously may have affected their concentration. It was hard for them to understand that I was not going to tell them how to say in English this or that word. They tried really hard to get the thing done during the writing. After 6 or 8 students asked me, Miss, how do I say that? And I didn't answer them back because I said, it's your vocabulary, not mine. I think they got it. Regarding professional and personal learning process, I can say that I'm really proud of my students because I think that they improved in their writings. And this was because of the many things they learned and put into practice, because we all the time are teaching them and we assume that just because we said so or we taught them so, they learned. But I could say that in this case, they learned and put the learned things into practice. Now I know that even though I always complain about the quality of the writing of my students, I have never really considered the fact that the way they had learned how to do it maybe was not the best one. I think I was able to give out the necessary knowledge in an effective way. That's why I will implement the same activity with the other 2 classes. I know they won't be part of an action research, but I'm so confident in the fact that this will be very beneficial for them that I will do it anyway. I will also tell my colleagues from the English department what I did, and I will share with them all the material I created for this project because I know it will be something useful for both my colleagues and their students. Regarding audio logs, they were quite a challenge as I am not used to recording myself. All the time I see my students recording themselves or taking selfies, but I'm not even good at taking pictures of me. Imagine recording me. But even though they were a bit hard for me to do them at the beginning, I have to admit that they were very useful when doing this video, but also when thinking of the things that I will do differently next time. Because when days go by, you tend to forget some details that will make a difference. So I think it was a very good idea to keep a track on the things that you did, on the reactions of your students, on actually what happened, so that it will be much easier for me or for us, my classmates as well, to record this reflective video.